Yo, what's going on, everybody? This your boy Sean, aka Puff Commentator 3, and we are back. And it is WrestleMania season. We are gonna go 3 weeks talking WrestleMania. Me and BB, we're gonna get our wrestling on. We're gonna talk all the quotes. We're gonna talk all the fantastic matches that happened within the first 13 WrestleManias. And we're gonna have a good time doing it, man. I know BB got his sheet. He's got all his list of matches that he's going to talk about. I'm going to go through this thing because I didn't watch all these WrestleManias, but I did go through highlights of them. And and plus, I grew up watching this stuff, so yeah. I remember it in the back of my mind. It's still there. So we're going to have a great time, and you hear the classic WrestleMania theme in the background because you got to have some WrestleMania music when we're talking WrestleMania. How are you doing, BB?
Well, you didn't lose your sanity by binge watching all the first 13 WrestleManias.
hey, like I said, work life and sleep life. It's hard to watch 3 hours of shows every day.
Because I was just working and watching wrestling, and it's like it's a certain point, you just went crazy, and it's like no pukesters to the left, no pukesters to the right. Didn't need them back then. Don't need them now.
Intervention, what's going on? How you doing? Yeah, but this is gonna be fun. Like even the weeks building up to it, and when you said we was gonna do it for 3 weeks, I was like, the more I thought about it, I'm like, man, we're gonna have a blast. There's gonna be a lot of praises, a lot of rants, a lot of arguments, and we're still gonna have fun doing it. And this is gonna be
I mean, next week we're gonna get like to some crazy WrestleMania. We go like WrestleMania 23.
Oh boy, yeah. We're gonna go through the Attitude Era, the Ruthless Aggression Era. So yeah, it's gonna be fun next week. But right now we're gonna talk the early WrestleMania.
Yeah, the beginning.
And I know like people can be hit or miss on the early ones because one thing about modern fans is that they kind of go back and look at old school wrestling and say, oh, it's crap, they don't really respect it. But it's not about just the matches.
Exactly. It's there's I just love old school wrestling, and so for me it was not a track to get like through the early WrestleManias. It was a track to get through 11 and 12 and 13 for some stuff.
I know when it comes to 13, I only go to one match. Every time I rewatch 13, I just go to one match.
There is a sleeper on the card though that I'm gonna have in my honorable mention.
It's got to be the Nation of Domination match.
Now, if they would have gone over, yes, but
but yes, let's talk about the first WrestleMania. WrestleMania 1, which was March. Let me get the date right. March 31st, the last day of March. And it's crazy how now we're in the start of WrestleMania season. And it's April. WrestleMania has always been in March, and now it's in the middle of April.
Yeah.
Yes.
I also think that. I mean, of course, like with the early WrestleManias, the Royal Rumble didn't really matter that much. But I really think that currently, very often, the Rumble winner suffers from a too long road to WrestleMania.
Alright, I'm gonna share this image. The classic right there. The main event of the first WrestleMania. Mr. T and Hulk Hogan against Roddy Piper and Mr. Wonderful.
Wonderful.
And that main event sold the whole show because Vince McMahon put a lot of stock into that show due to this match, due to the celebrity involvement of Mr. T, Cyndi Lauper, Muhammad Ali, and a couple others. This match was the main attraction that sold the whole event. And if this match would have failed, then we don't know what WrestleMania would have been. It would have been non-existent because all the money that Vince got from Jim Crockett after Jim Crockett brought the spot with Georgia Championship Wrestling. It went to WrestleMania.
Didn't Pat Patterson come up with the name WrestleMania and Vince wanted to give it a silly name or something?
There's always like some stories on who really came up with the title WrestleMania. It was either Pat Patterson or Howard Finkel, one of them. But either way, one of those two guys we got to thank for the title of WrestleMania.
Yeah, it's really like I said the last time when we talked that.
Hey, take care.
Have a great day, Incha. Like when the last time we talked, that I said there's like there's actually like a match you wish to be like the WrestleMania 1 main event, which of course was before there was a race. WrestleMania would be Hogan versus the Iron Sheik. Like that would have been such a fantastic start to WrestleMania, but of course.
Hell, I thought Hogan versus Roddy Piper alone could have been the main event.
Of course, but then you have the problem of who's going over.
Which is one of the main topics whenever they go back and talk about this match, is that Roddy was supposed to do the JOB to Mr. T, and he said no. Because you got to think, Roddy Piper and a lot of other wrestlers were very protective of their spots, and they did not want any involvement with celebrities whatsoever. Because they thought celebrities was like, this is our territory. This is what we do. And then y'all want to come in and try and make money off of us?
Yeah, and of course with Roddy Piper, it's like there's different sort of celebrities, and some he probably didn't like more than others.
And then it's funny how Roddy Piper was sitting on the celebrities, and then he became a celebrity once he got into the entertainment business.
Yeah.
In terms of movies. But
and still wasn't putting people over until WrestleMania 8.
Hey man, he didn't even put Keith David over, and they had the best fight in movie history. But for me, this match is the highlight of the first Mania, and then there's a couple other great matches.
Yeah, I think for me the highlight. Yeah, actually I think the highlight, also like in terms of wrestling and presentation, is of course when you Rico and Cyndi Lauper. So actually, in terms of women wrestling, the first WrestleMania had more to offer than many others later.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the only match that was over 10 minutes was Brutus Beefcake David San Martino. I'm like,
yeah, I do have to say that I think that the short matches help a lot, like especially because the card is so stacked. So at least a lot of people got like the WrestleMania payday, even if the payday back then was not like a modern WrestleMania payday. But in generally, I think even if you watch it today, the presentation and just like the smoothness of the matches, it's still very entertaining.
I did like the Iron Sheik and Nikola Volkov winning the tag belts from the US.
And of course, when you give the Iron Sheik a live mic, you always get like, Soviet Union #1, Iran #1, USA, Hatua!
like you can't go wrong giving the Iron Sheik a live mic.
Rest in peace, Iron Sheik. It's just like they don't make it like that anymore. So like I said, it's like I almost wish that WrestleMania started earlier, so you get like really prime Iron Sheik.
Yeah.
And not just like stuck in a mid-card Iron Sheik.
And when you mention Iron Sheik versus Hulk Hogan could have been a main event. Iron Sheik, like I said, back then heels knew how to get nuclear heat.
Yeah, at one point, especially as they have introduced now like the immortal moments into the Hall of Fame at one point, of course. I truly hope that it goes like that category not only goes for WrestleMania matches, but for like matches in general. But yeah, one of the matches we're gonna talk about today is actually the first inductee into the Magic Moments category.
And it was great seeing Muhammad Ali.
Immortal moments, I think the category is there.
Yeah, but it was great seeing Muhammad Ali part of the first WrestleMania because Muhammad Ali had a history with wrestling. Like he always thought that wrestling was great for showmanship, and he had like there's always the what if. Like what if Muhammad Ali back when he was suspended from boxing, what if he got involved with wrestling? And his character, like he always cut those great promos and build up things.
I mean, he was never the same after the match with Inoki.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
but he always he had interactions with Gorilla Monsoon, and a lot of other people, and it's like, man, he had wrestling down to the T in terms of character presentation, promo wise. He could have sold out arenas just based on his promo alone.
And talking about Gorilla Monsoon, it's like the first WrestleManias, having him on commentary, such a fantastic voice, and especially because when I grew up, of course we had German moderators, so I didn't hear Gorilla Monsoon until later when I got my first wrestling DVDs, and you had the English track on them. So for a very long time I just knew Gorilla Monsoon as one of the fake WWE presidents. Along with Jack Tunney and other people.
Everybody thought Jack Tunney was really the man behind WWF. Like he ran it, so he's oh, he's the boss. He owns the company.
Yeah. Go ahead. And I remember buying the first WWF VHS tapes back in the day, the Colosseum videos, and there was also Gorilla Monsoon, going through the matches. So actually, very later on, then when I discovered via DVD, and then later, of course, the WWE Network, how fantastic he was on commentary, along with Bobby Heenan, Jesse the Body Ventura, and others that just that added a whole new layer to watching wrestling. Because as fun as the German commentators were back then, they were way more tame than of course Bobby Heenan or Jesse.
Yeah, they didn't have the pizzazz that those two guys had. And of course Gorilla he was classic. Jesse or Bobby goes off on a tangent, they're like, will you stop? And then he always just knew how to put a match over. And that was the thing with the commentary, is whether it was Gorilla and Jesse, Gorilla and Bobby, they really sold you on the product. And their voices, along with the great voices of Mean Gene and Howard Finkel, who did the ring announcing.
And I love Mean Gene, but him singing the hymn at the beginning of WrestleMania 1.
It's hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
But we will not drag Mean Gene down like that. As bad as it was, we love Mean Gene for what he gave us, man. The classic backstage promos, and just his iconic voice. He never took shit from anybody. That's the problem with modern announcers who talk to wrestlers. They always get treated like crap. You ain't doing that to Mean Gene.
Yeah.
So, back the presentation and the people involved were just so instrumental in our childhood watching wrestling.
Yeah, and WrestleMania 1, the granddaddy of them all, and it really started. To start someone that 41 fucking years later,
yeah, it's
we
crazy.
are 41,
It's as we age, WrestleMania gets the same age, and it's man, it's crazy when you look back and see man, this is still going on. But that's the credit to Vince. No matter what Vince went through over the last few years, becomes the Antichrist and whatever.
I mean, look at the cards of the first WrestleManias, and Vince is probably not in the top 3 douchebags.
but we have to give Vince that credit that he started something that more or less pretty much destroyed the territories. What's up, Al? Because the territories could not compete against this. AWA tried with Super Clash, that failed. The only thing that existed before WrestleMania was Starrcade.
Exactly, it's just that Vince did not per se deliver the best wrestling show, but he delivered the most mainstream appeal.
Yes, we know he ain't shit, but we're not gonna say without that discredit him for what he established in the 80s. But a lot of people who grew up in the territories will hate in the time.
Yeah, but let's just say that next week, my top 10 list has a lot of Vince McMahon probably in it. What they're doing into them? Just eating bread and water.
Just don't ask which media.
Yeah, okay. Because currently it's how can people afford these tickets? And then every time Triple H is going out, it's we have the highest gate. It's we fucked you over more than anybody else before.
So, are you ready to move to WrestleMania 2, or do you have any last thoughts?
I am ready for WrestleMania 2, which
So, Bundy Mania is running wild at WrestleMania 2.
And we're getting the blue cage.
The big blue cage. Yeah, they do. But, Vince is the reason why all this exists.
And people can say about Vince what they want. He's fucking entertaining.
Hey, go ahead, man. Let the cat out. We don't care. But when it comes to WrestleMania 2, the problem with this show is that he got too ambitious and tried to do 3 different venues and have main events for each venue. And
hey, Dan.
What's up, Dan? And
there was a drought for a long time.
And the problem is that between the crowds and some of the matches on the card, it just don't stand out as much.
Yeah, and when you're in certain venue and you're totally fucked with the matches and you only see the other matches on the screen at the show, I do have to say that even though the matches are very lackluster, the Battle Royale was, I think, actually the most entertaining one on this show. But what really was entertaining and what really made me enjoy watch WrestleMania 2 was the commentary, because you had a different commentary team on any venue. So I had Vince involved, and you had Jesse Ventura and others. And I even have my quote here, do you like snakes? From WrestleMania 2, because it's of course it wasn't Jake the Snake Ross, but it sounded like such an innuendo when Rich said it. Gonna see the snake. I guess win, lose or draw, we gonna see the snake.
Bring out the snake.
And of course you had Jesse the Body Ventura along with Elvira commentating the cage match between Hogan and King of Bundy, and that by itself is very entertaining. So I think when you watch it and you have a focus on the commentary teams, WrestleMania 2 is very enjoyable. Just don't focus too much on the matches.
At least they didn't have somebody like Art Donovan doing commentary like he did at the King of the Ring 1994.
Yeah.
How much does that get? Yeah, Superstars on Saturday. That was go to after Saturday morning cartoons, you go straight to WWF Superstars.
Yeah, their Spider likes WrestleMania too.
True. Vince had to throw some gimmicks on guys that didn't really need it.
Yeah, it's yeah, it is what it is, but like I say, it's like in the end, it's just the Mr. McMahon character alone is like worth everything, and of course, Durek wins.
Now, what I like about WrestleMania 2 in terms of like one of the matches that stick out is the Battle Royal.
Yeah, like the Battle Royal is actually very entertaining.
Yeah, they have a bunch of football players in there, William the Refrigerator Perry and a few others.
He went to the Hall of Fame because of that, I think.
But what I liked was the ending, because you had Andre the Giant against the Hart Foundation.
Yeah.
And this was like...
First of all, L, Isaac Yan, Kingston is better than fake Diesel.
Yeah.
Sometimes, literally.
But yeah, like, the Battle Royal was fun, but then to have Andre in the ring with the Hart Foundation and them working him over until he got the chance to eliminate them, it was almost as if he was putting the Hart Foundation over at the end, even though he won. Because that's when the Hart Foundation really started to gain traction and win matches on their way to the tag title.
In generally, when you rewatch like all the WrestleManias, like the rise of Bret Hart and of course later on also Shawn Michaels, it's like very interesting to see like in this basically with these yearly highlights. And also it's good to think also to remind people that actually how long Bret was like in the Hart Foundation tag team, which like with nowadays, you know how soon the break up tag team sometimes feels like quite unrealistic.
And I know when we go through these WrestleManias, we're really gonna talk about how great the tag team scene was in the 80s.
Yeah.
That's and the Hart Foundation was there for the majority of it. And they had great matches with every team that they fought. So I thought that it was a pretty fun battle royal. Andre the Giant won because he's Andre the fucking Giant. He should win any battle royal. Like, who the fuck can throw him over?
I mean, he was 15 years unbeat before WrestleMania.
And at the end, the Hart Foundation got over to the point where, you know, they were tag champs by the end of the year.
Yeah.
And I thought the Hogan and Bundy cage match was entertaining, just for the fact that Elvira actually knew what she was talking about. So they definitely filled her in, and then she delivered her charisma
and all the nice innuendos.
Yeah, you know, but
about performing in a cage.
But yeah, WrestleMania 2 is not my favorite, and it's definitely not a great structured show.
Yeah,
but it has moments.
It's not WrestleMania 9, and it's not WrestleMania 11.
Yeah, I mean, the boxing match between Mr. T and Roddy Piper was a complete waste of time.
It was a complete waste of time, and it's crazy that match didn't get over at all, and yet Vince tried for decades to get boxing over at WrestleMania.
Like, you think it's Piper and Mr. T, we get a one-on-one encounter or something like that, but not a boxing match. That was the only like thing that carried over from the first WrestleMania to this is Piper and Mr. T.
Yeah, and of course, what is my issues with early WrestleManias is, of course, like from nowadays perspective, is I don't think a WrestleMania match should end like in a disqualification or like a count out. But of course, back in the day, it was still like very much also used like on pay-per-views as a storytelling device, especially when you have somebody like Roddy Piper that won't let anybody go over, but also you can't have Mr. T not getting over. So you have like a lot of bullshit finishes because of so many egos involved.
And back then, Ego Mania ran wild.
Oh yeah, like I say, like we're gonna talk a lot about Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan, and how Hulk Hogan kept Randy like.
and you know, one thing I don't like about social media is that people be overusing words that they like somebody take a loss. Oh, why are they burying this person?
Yeah.
Nice.
Like burying is like something different when you really basically get rid of a person.
but they be just saying shit without even knowing what it truly means. Like that person wasn't buried.
Yeah.
But you know, that's modern wrestling today. Now,
Cena buried Barrett though.
WrestleMania 3.
Basically, WrestleMania 3 is the first like real WrestleMania as this bigger than life event, as you know, having like this two main event that carried like everything, and then it's like, you know, like I have one match from WrestleMania 11 on my top list because I was a huge mark back then, and it was like my last year of being like a preteen mark. And this is like why this match, even though there's so many things to criticize about it, it's like on there. But yeah, WrestleMania 3 is like the first one that is like really larger than life. And let's face it, if Hulk Hogan would not get booed out of every venue in 2025, Hulk Hogan versus Andre the Giant would be the first match that would be introduced as like immortal moment.
Yeah. Because no matter how you feel about the match,
yeah,
it's the spectacle of the match.
It's still, you know, ring psychology wise, you know, the build up.
That's the thing with how people today, they're like Andre the Giant was wasted and he was shits in the ring, but he had the psychology to know what to do in the ring.
And also, you know, I think a lot of people talk shit about like how Andre performed in WrestleMania 3, while this was exactly the role he had to be into. If you watch, Andre wrestled a few weeks later Otto Wanz in Europe, like an Austrian wrestler, and he moved like way smoother, way swifter in that match in Europe. So to say like that Andre could barely move with WrestleMania 3, I think is like more like a myth, because in Europe the same year after WrestleMania he performed a great match. You can see that match online on YouTube. Otto Wanz, against Andre the Giant, and Andre was a different Andre in that match than he was at WrestleMania 3.
And it's funny how you say Andre was different than what he was in 3. Hulk Hogan is the same when he goes wrestle in Japan.
Yeah, exactly. When you watch when you watch like the Hulk Hogan matches in Japan, you know, Ichiban Hogan, then you know, Hulk Hogan he's not the best wrestler in history, but he's a proper wrestler and he can carry a match. Like nobody can say that he's not able to carry a match, and he can also just perform to the occasion. And you know, he didn't, with this immortal Hulk Hogan character, he gave exactly the people what they wanted to. You know, even though like later when we're also gonna talk like WrestleMania 5 against Savage, I wanna see Savage go over, but the crowd was still there for Hulkamania, which of course changed later in the later WrestleManias after 6. But yeah, you know that Hogan versus Andre is a match which we're gonna, because it's also on my top 10 list. It's a match that people analyze very often wrong, and they talk more about the limitations of both wrestlers that actually were not limitations, but that were actually like planned for the characters.
And that's what people don't get. Back then, it was the characters, it was the psychology, and just knowing that they had the crowd in the palm of their hand.
Yeah. Also, for the commentaries, you know what I believed back then, and this is like sort of my own headcanon, because there were some things, you know, where like, is this real? Is it not real? I thought actually when I was a kid that basically they have like a certain time frame in which they can fight, and if the time is over, a planned finish like triggers. that's how like Mark Forsten, like back in the day, was like explaining to himself how this works.
Hey, I know a lot of people always like to go, when it comes to WrestleMania 3, the Macho Steamboat match.
Yeah, that's like it created the blueprint for modern wrestling matches, you can say.
But I'm also impartial. I like the 6-man tag between the Hart Foundation and Danny Davis against the Bulldogs and Tito Santana, just because of the heel work from the heel team of the Hart Foundation and Danny Davis, and then just easy just cheating their way to victory.
Real WrestleMania 3 is like a very entertaining show, and in general, and also like we'll also have to mention, with Tito Santana, he was in every WrestleMania until I think WrestleMania 8. So in the first 8 WrestleMania, like also like Tito Santana, like always had a place on the card.
Yeah, he was Intercontinental Champion. For a while, but yeah, this WrestleMania 3 holds, like I said, the venue right there in Detroit. It's just classic.
Yes.
It's you got this card, supposedly Roddy Piper's last match at this time against Adrian Adonis.
Yeah.
But he ended up returning a few years later, so it didn't really mean nothing.
Yeah.
But
there's like one thing I would have done differently. Like I think that I think you could have done more with Jake the Snake. I really, but it's probably also maybe a Hulk Hogan thing, since Jake the Snake, just also fantastic in ring psychology, like great promo, but it always felt like at the first WrestleManias that he was like kept down. If you know what I mean. It seemed like with Rick Rude, like where I was like.
When it comes to Jake, I would have loved to see what would have happened had he stayed heel.
Yeah.
Had he not turned babyface before this event, because they turned him face because he was starting to get popular with the fans, and then the whole situation with Hulk Hogan, where the fans actually cheered him.
Yeah, so
Hogan was like, we got to turn him babyface because we can't have him be competing against Hogan in terms of crowd reaction.
Yeah.
But it would have been interesting had Jake the Snake stayed heel. But yeah, overall, I like WrestleMania. It's one of the first grand spectacle WrestleManias that really put it up there in terms of this is now a big thing. Like WrestleMania 1 was the great start, 2 was kind of a hiccup, but now they found their glory with 3.
Exactly, and also like how to really create like a powerful main event.
Yeah, and the build up to the main event and to the Steamboat Savage match was some of the best build up ever.
And also with Hogan versus Andre, the build up to WrestleMania 3 is still one of my earliest childhood memories. I remember sitting like we were visiting my grandparents and they had like wrestling on, and I was seeing that Andre was ripping off Hogan's cross and everything, and I was just there, a small kid, and like, oh my god, but this is awesome. Like,
and you see some blood on Hogan, the scratch from ripping it off, like, bro, it was shocking. Yeah. And then the whole thing with Steamboat and Savage, him dropping the ring bell onto Steamboat's larynx and stuff. And like, as a kid, this is gripping shit. Like, yo, how is Steamboat gonna come back from this?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just classic. Like, nothing was better than old school storytelling. And they really, especially at the time when there was really no Monday Night Raw, WCW Nitro and stuff like that. Like, they had to just rely on certain shows to tell the promos, the storylines, and all that without having them interact every week.
You know, like a lot of people forget like that Raw was actually not a thing like for many years still at this point.
No, it wasn't. But yeah, WrestleMania 3 is definitely a highlight. And it's also the start of Brutus Beefcake transitioning to becoming the Barber. This was the end of the Dream Team.
Oh boy, Leslie.
But yeah, WrestleMania 3 is definitely up there. But now we get to WrestleMania 4. Primetime was the weekly show at the time. But one thing, when you watch some of them old prime times, they were more like taking matches from house shows and broadcasting them, and then to the storylines without them actually interacting. It wasn't like Monday Night Raw or anything like the shows that we grew up in the 90s watching. It was more like just let's get the promos and the storylines over, and then just show a bunch of random matches.
Yeah. The crazy thing is that when you watch like old German, wrestling highlight shows of that time, where WWF didn't have creative control like really over there, and the German commentators like before the match also acknowledges like, oh, like he was like an NWA champion, and so that was like very interesting when you watch like a clip of the old German shows.
But yeah, now it's time to get to WrestleMania 4. And now, when it comes to WrestleMania 4, my thing with the show, trying to find it, I took it off.
I still think people shoot too much on the tournament. I enjoyed WrestleMania 4 very much.
My problem with that tournament is, of course, classic, iconic image there. But my problem with the tournament was, it could have been trimmed down to just the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals, as opposed to having first round, second round, third, and final.
Yeah. I do get it, but I still think it was like quite entertaining. It's like the thing that I would have had like the Randy Savage versus Ted DiBiase final would have been on my top 10 list if Hulk Hogan wouldn't have went to business for himself again, and most heelish move ever gives Ted DiBiase a fucking chair shot as a face.
Just what you said. Macho Man won the title, but Hulk Hogan was there for the whole duration of it.
Yeah.
And I understand because DiBiase had Andre at his side, but at the same time, it felt like Hogan was taking some of that spotlight.
But it's also the thing. Macho Man was the babyface. It's okay to have the odds stacked against him. He shouldn't rely on fucking Hulk Hogan to win the title, because basically Ted DiBiase actually. First of all, I want to say that when you watch also the early WrestleManias and also other shows back then, people underestimate how great Ted DiBiase was in the ring. Like how to get the sleeper hold so fucking over. Like Ted DiBiase was amazing.
He gives you $1 million dream.
Yeah, but he had the most despicable gimmick ever. Nobody loves the billionaire. Everybody hates the rich man. However, after this match, when Hogan basically screwed DiBiase with the chair shot, it's like, oh, poor Ted DiBiase. This would have been such a fantastic final.
Hell, I felt like if you was gonna give us this final, then you should have just let DiBiase been the champion after Andre won it and gave it to him. I understand the rules, but might as well have DiBiase be the champion and then lose it to Macho.
Yeah. I know, but also it's just it's Hogan ruined WrestleMania 4, and I was a big Hulkamaniac also when I was a kid. But then but it's but seeing it just like that, he it was not his place to be.
It was like, we're gonna have Macho Man defeat Ted DiBiase by himself, and Hogan's like, that doesn't work for me, brother.
Yeah,
I need to be involved in that.
Exactly, it's like you can't have like a main event for WrestleMania without Hulk Hogan.
And,
Which of course makes it so funny, like with WrestleMania 11, when they recapture like all the past WrestleMania, and since Hogan's in WCW, they only show the celebrity.
But yeah, like 4 it's not my favorite. It's not really that watchable because I felt like it was too many tournament matches, and when you have too many tournament matches, every match is like 5 minutes or less. And every time a match really starts to get traction, it ends because they got more matches that have the show. So it just felt, it didn't feel organized. It felt so disorganized with having all those matches. Plus, the early WrestleManias were long. Like, those suckers were like 3.5 to 4 hours. People complain about the recent WrestleManias being long. These WrestleManias had intermissions. Bro, I had one of the early pay-per-views of like 88, 89, and they were 30-minute intermissions in between the shows. So it's like, yeah, they had intermissions in those early shows, so they went like 3.5 to 4 hours.
Yeah.
So when you have so many matches like the tournament, and really, none of them really stood out for me. Especially when, like some of them really, you start to enjoy and it just ends because they gotta get to the next one. It felt like they could have just made quarters, semis, and finals.
I do have to say, I'm a big sucker for tournaments.
Yeah,
I actually really dislike how they do it right now with the King and the Queen of the Ring, to just have the final on pay-per-view. I really want to have like one night with a tournament. I'm already looking forward to the Tournament of Survival at GCW. Death matches tournaments are always the best. Jim Cornette hates me for this.
When it comes to tournaments, like they can be done really, really good. But WWE, they dropped the ball on many of their, especially the King of the Ring concept. Because the first King of the Ring was great, and then King of the Rings afterwards, it's like, we don't really want to put focus on the King of the Ring. Let's just have a title match be the main event, and the King of the Ring is just an afterthought.
Yeah, sadly, and tournaments are fun. It's just,
and there's two things I want to talk about, and then we'll move on.
Yeah,
we got the Hulk Hogan Andre rematch, and it was what it was. There's no way that. Yeah, there's no way they was going to top what they did at 3.
Yeah,
so
they
just an excuse for them to get knocked out of the round by just having no contest.
Exactly.
And then it was WrestleMania 4 that led to the Hart Foundation turning face because Bad News Brown came in, and I always liked Bad News Brown. Like I always thought like he was such a cool heel. He hated the faces and he hated other heels. So he was all for himself. And he thought by teaming up with Bret Hart, they would share the trophy, but he completely blindsided him with the Ghetto Blaster. Talk about fucking a stereotypical name. He eliminated Bret, and Bret Hart was furious, and he destroyed the trophy. And that's
that trophy
that
trophy wanted to overcompensate for something.
But yeah, other than that, WrestleMania 4 is just decent. But that's about it. Now we get to WrestleMania 5. The Mega Powers.
Explode!
That's the second time it happened. But yeah, the Mega Powers is to me the pinnacle of the WrestleMania's 4 main event scene because we saw Hulk Hogan help Macho Man win the title and celebrate with Macho Man. And then the next year, And
Last 27.
one thing about 4 to 5, that was a great year-long development.
Yes, this is also basically set like the WWF blueprint for long-term storytelling. And it's a thing, that it just, we also got, of course, so many entertaining, like, promos, like I already said before, no pukesters to the left, no pukesters to the right. And the wrong person was in the heel role here. However, I have to say, when watching it, that the crowd was there for Hulk Hogan, and business-wise, it sadly was the right choice to put the title on Hogan at that point, even though personally I would love to have seen Savage go over.
I think a lot of people wanted to see Savage win.
Yeah, but this was still like prime Hulkamania, was still running wild. There's one match on this WrestleMania 5 card that is extra in my honorable mentions, which is the tag team match of the Brainbusters versus Strike Force. Because it's so weird to see Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard in a WWF match.
Man, look, when it comes to the Brainbusters, my favorite match of theirs in the WWF, they had the match against the Rockers on TV and house shows. But I love the SummerSlam match against the Hart Foundation. Like, they fit in so well in the tag team scene in the WWF that it's like, man, they can wrestle Southern style in NWA, and then they come to WWF, they work well with the Rockers, they work well with the Hart Foundation, they work well with Demolition. And we didn't even talk the last WrestleMania 4, Demolition won the tag titles from Strike Force.
Yeah. Which they held for a long time.
So, yeah, like the Brainbusters, Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard was just perfect. And having them be a part of the Heenan family with Bobby Heenan was just top notch.
I mean, in general,
they go from the Horsemen to the Heenan family, just awesome.
Yeah, it's like it still feels. I love Arn Anderson. In WCW, like he was just, like he was like this old man strength guy where it's like, even though he looks like the most deadish of everybody, he can still he still was like so over the ring, he's a fucking enforcer.
Also, WrestleMania 5 is the debut of the Rockers, Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty, and they fight the Twin Towers of the Big Boss Man and the King, the African Dream. Talk about a gimmick change that
from
was
one man
how
gang.
do you go from one man game to a King, the African Dream? Are you serious, Vince McMahon?
I mean, some people say that basically the Akeem gimmick is a rip on Dusty Rhodes.
But really, the African Dream is like, come on. Like that, like we all know that Dusty got his mannerisms and his charisma from black superstars, especially Thunderbolt Patterson.
I mean, there's a reason why his son is called Cody Raheem Rhodes.
but then Vince took it too far with King the African Dream. It's so fucking ridiculous. But I can't help it. It's entertaining.
Yeah.
In all the wrong ways.
I know. And he sells it so well.
It doesn't help when he comes out with Slickster's Jive Soul Bro song, and it just adds to the absurdity of it. Like, you can't, and that's also, like, I remember Sweet and Sour Larry Sweetney, independent wrestler. He had a dance over with King, and they did the Jive Soul Bro song, and it's like, man, you can't help but smile. And the King still dresses up as the gimmick. He still embraces it. I call him King. He's a one-man game. But he still embraces the gimmick.
I mean, it was certainly very unique, and And even though Vince may have had like ulterior motives behind him, he sold it so well and he made it work. He made and this is like basically one of the biggest accomplishments in WWE. And the Vince, he gives you a shitty gimmick and you somehow make it work. And he made it work. It's like you want. It's basically, if you see stills, you just think, what the fuck is that? And then you see him like emotion in the man. It's like, son of a bitch, this works.
Got the nerve to put Akeem the African Dream against Hakeem the African Dream of basketball. Oh man. But his tag partner, the Big Boss Man, bro, 1989. I remember the steel cage match Boss Man had with Hulk Hogan. Man, I was just glued to the chair watching that match. The suplex Hogan gave him off the top of the cage was an iconic moment
Big
on TV.
Big Boss Man back in the day, for a man his size, very swift in the ring.
Yeah, he can move. Yeah. And I thought the whole thing with Hulk Hogan elevated Bossman. Because, yeah, he was in the tag team with the Towers. But that feud with Hogan really elevated his stock. And it led to an easy babyface turn in 1990. But, yeah, WrestleMania 5 also had Rick Rude versus the Ultimate Warrior. And Rick Rude finally wins his solo title thanks to Bobby Heenan. But I always enjoyed the Rude Warrior rivalry. Because their SummerSlam match was just as good.
And then also like Rick Rude, one of the greatest that never won the big one.
Yeah, it's a shame that his career ended way too early.
Yeah, I mean there's also some very crazy conspiracy theories about his dick and about like
I knew this was coming, man. I knew that was coming. But yeah, WrestleMania 5 I enjoyed. I will say I didn't like them going back to the Trump Plaza again. Like I felt like it was good the first time. The second time they could have had a different venue. But Trump wanted it back.
Yeah, one of the things, after a pause, it would have worked well. But I'm also still a fan of, that have different locations for different years. That also makes it more, like it doesn't feel like the same in many ways. I still think, and of course they don't do it because of money reasons. I still think that 10, 20, 30, like 40. I think that 40 should have been in Madison Square Garden because of tradition. But of course, I get like the money.
I would have liked had 5 been at Madison Square Garden. That way you do every 5 years the Garden.
That would have worked, and it's like just the Madison Square Garden. It's like WWE in the Garden. It's something special.
Yeah, and it's kind of a shame that they don't do the Garden no more for the big shows.
Yeah,
because the Garden is not a stadium, but it's an iconic piece of history for WrestleMania. It started at the Garden. It shall always be at the Garden for its show.
You hear this song that you have playing now, and it's like, "Welcome to the Madison Square Garden." Like it's just. It feels natural. It's.
Alright, man. So now we go the Ultimate Challenge.
There's actually a match on there. This is the number 10 of my favorite WrestleMania matches because it's not always about wrestling. Sometimes it's also about entertainment, and you don't get more entertainment than the Macho King and Dusty Rhodes. And with Sapphire and of course with Experiment.
That's your number 10.
That's my number 10 because
most people will put that on their worst list.
That match is so fucking entertaining. Like, you have Dusty Rhodes and Randy Savage in the ring, and you get like their best moves. I think it's a very short match, and I also think that with Sapphire it works, of course with Sherry Martel it works. Then Miss Elizabeth also like coming out I love this match. This is, and after all, wrestling is not always about the best wrestling match per se. Sometimes it's just about entertainment, and who are better entertainers than Dusty Rhodes and Randy Savage? So this match, wrestling is a buffet. There's something for everybody, and this match I never get bored. This is a match I never skip when I rewatch a WrestleMania. And even though, of course, Vince probably wanted to bury Dusty Rhodes,
he could.
He's just a common man, polka dots, and he still made it fucking work.
The man is just too charismatic.
Yeah.
For him to just, like, Dusty can get a bowl of shit over.
Yeah.
Any way he can, because he's just that damn good at it, man.
He is, and if you want to look at this match and see that two of the best wrestling personas in history are stuck in an intergender tag team match in the mid-card of WrestleMania 6. If you want to see this as something degrading, you can totally see it. If you want to see it as what they made out of the position they got on the card, this is like how I approach it. And they made something work, which was probably meant to be just like a shitty spot on the card.
Man, I would have loved to see a Macho Man Dusty Rhodes feud. I would say mid-80s. When Dusty was still at his best. Like, he was good in the WWF, but I just felt like...
Yeah, it was like
they had a singles match at SummerSlam. That I was like, all right, finally, we got a one-on-one encounter without Sapphire, without Sherry. Yeah. But the match is like 5 minutes. I'm like, wait, these guys can do way more than just 5 minutes. Exactly,
and not even wrestling, just have them, just both in the ring being themselves alone is just like very much entertaining. And let's just say that a Dusty Rhodes versus Randy Savage match, a serious one, would be worthy of a WrestleMania.
Hey, I would say a real Dusty Rhodes Randy Savage match. What these modern fans say, that match will feed children. That match will feed families.
Feed families, yeah, absolutely.
You put, like, take 85, 86 Dusty and that 86, 87 Macho Man when he was heel, man.
Yeah.
You talking about some great promos, great beatdowns, and great matches.
Sometimes, when they say, like, they did get the short stick of WrestleMania, but sometimes it's not always about our size, but what we made with it, and they made it work. For me, from the first 13 WrestleManias, this is my number 10 spot, and just like, this match is entertaining as hell.
Hey man, I always like when you have something completely out of the norm that people will vehemently disagree with you, but it's like, hey, you have a great reasoning and a great explanation, and I'm like, hey, I can't disagree with you.
Yeah.
Because it's your list and you gave a valid reason. And I like when somebody throws a curveball and put a match that a lot of people would dislike and say that was the worst. Because it's, again, like you said, it's pure entertainment. That's what we look out of this with. What entertains us most? Now this match right here.
And
the Ultimate Challenge.
It's also my top 10 list, because this shows really that how fucking good Hulk Hogan is to carry a match. If you can carry the ultimate challenge is to carry a match with the Ultimate Warrior.
Rick Rude had to do it throughout all of '89.
Yeah.
Now it was Hulk Hogan's turn.
And Hulk did it perfect. You know, this is basically, you know, this is like the one of the WrestleMania where you have the clash of two gods. In the face versus face match, actually, Intercontinental Champion Ultimate Warrior versus the WWF Champion Hulk Hogan, and just this match was so larger than life. You know, that my father gives a fuck about wrestling, but when I mention wrestling, he always says in this year, like, he loved Warrior, like. And you know, this is one of these matches that did what Vince always wanted to do. This crossed over. This was a worldwide event, and it's just like, you know, you can say about both people what you want. This was magic. And of course, afterwards, Hogan also overstayed his welcome.
This match divided the fans.
Yeah.
Because I was a Hulk Hogan fan, but I also liked Warrior. And for some unknown reason, you just can't deny.
I was all about Hogan.
You cannot deny when you hear the opening part of that song, you start to perk up and like the energy that he brought when he ran to the ring. And then he's totally gassed. And as a kid, you don't think that way. You just say, this guy is just colorful. He's built like a god himself, you know, with all the roids that he took. But, you know, again, it's like, Vince McMahon, this is why after this match, he did not want to do something like this again. Because he didn't want to split the fan base. And he doesn't know whether or not the person who he thinks that can carry the torch past Hogan can literally carry that torch.
This match may be also responsible for the WrestleMania 9 main event. That is it. Yeah, you know, which is so funny. I always was an old soul. Even when I was like a fucking kid, I'm like, I don't like this new guy. Like, I'm going traditional. I'm going to fuck out.
But when you at school, you can't help but tease or mess with the kid that likes the new guy.
Yeah.
So again, it's like now as a kid, you gotta go up against these Hogan fans if you're a Warrior fan, and if you're a Hogan fan, you gotta go against these Warrior fans.
Yeah.
So it's like again, you divided the audience, had actually playing because they like better. Man. But I'll tell this quick story. I had this whole WrestleMania on tape. I left the tape in the VCR. This is like in the mid-90s. And I didn't even know what happened. Maybe a couple days later, I pressed play to go back and watch the match again. And then all of a sudden, as the match is playing, the line starts coming up, and Speed Racer is on it. I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, what happened? I left the tape in the VCR not knowing, and my brother was playing with the VCR remotes. Accidentally hit record and recorded over the match. By the time it got back to the match, it was over.
So basically, how is Chase still alive after the Chipmunk fiasco and everything?
You know we're brothers, man.
I
gave him a diesel jackknife powerbombs.
And I also know who's like the heel in that situation.
And he's probably listening to it right now. He's like, come on, Sean, you ain't got to think that up.
love you, Chase, but not cool.
I love Speed Racer, but damn it, I was pissed off that it takes over my damn Hogan Warrior match. Oh. and on top of that tape also had a lot of old Saturday Night's main events on it, and it was I had the episode with the Mega Powers form.
And this was before the fucking internet. We just can't go to the network and watch it like it. Oh boy.
Well, my dad had all the wrestling tapes. I had Saturday Night's main events, all that stuff. And I was like, man, this tape was tainted because that match was taped over by speed.
It wasn't even what speed. It wasn't even Harley race. It was speed race.
The speed racer. Alright, so after all that, we get to WrestleMania 7.
Woo! Oh boy!
No, I will say, I enjoyed Hogan versus Slaughter. It's not great, it's not spectacular, but it was enjoyable. I'm one of the guys, you guys that I like Sergeant Slaughter. I didn't like him as a Rocky sympathizer. You know,
I didn't like it. I didn't like him as a heel. I was not buying Sergeant Slaughter as a heel.
I liked him as a heel boot camp soldier in the early 80s when he was a heel. Because it actually, like, yeah, who wants to cheer a guy who treats his people like crap and call them maggots and stuff like that? Yeah. That made more sense when it came to Slaughter being a heel. But
it's for
this
me,
version of Slaughter, no.
My grandfather was in the military, and so when I was a kid, like, the military was like the coolest thing ever. So Sergeant Slaughter immediately, like, for me, like a face. So like when it's like he's a heel, like, no, it doesn't work. Military men are not here.
But then they'll chew your ass out to the point where you hate them.
Well, that was later when I was at the military, which like was a huge heel turn for the military.
But as a match, it's not bad. You know, I enjoyed it. It entertained me. Hogan got some color in the match. You know,
it's just a rest. It's just like this feels like a SummerSlam, but not a WrestleMania. If you get me.
Again, I agree with you. It didn't feel like a Mania main event, and Vince swinging with the whole Iraqi Gulf War stuff. He didn't even need to go there. It didn't need to happen.
I actually, this is like one of the things where I don't fault that. I'm all for to integrate even controversial stuff into a storyline. Problem was just that the war was already won when WrestleMania.
Yeah. And it's like he's trying to catch in on something, and Slaughter got in threats because of this, when he turned heel and stuff like that. Yeah. So I'm like, why even bother doing it? Vince wanted to put some real world happenings into his show. Yeah. And like I said, it's hit or miss. I wasn't really a fan of it. But I thought the match was fine for what it was. Now the real highlight of the show, Macho Man Randy Savage versus the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
That match right there was the highlight of WrestleMania 7.
That's something that screams main event. And once again with WrestleMania 7, and also what we're gonna talk about with next WrestleMania 8, should have been a fucking main event.
That doesn't work for a certain person.
Yeah.
But yeah, that match, that was the first time the match was so significant and important because it was a retirement match. The Ultimate Warrior did not run to the ring.
And because Randy Savage was already so old back then. He was barely 40, I think.
But and this, we're gonna talk about it, especially during the new generation stuff, where while we thought Macho was old, he still had gas in the tank.
I mean, like I say, I was a huge WCW fan, and when after WrestleMania 12, I completely stopped watching WWF and just watched WCW, and this is also with WrestleMania 13, why I don't have any childhood memories because I watched it like years, like decades later even, because like this is NWO country.
You said you turned heel on the WWF and joined the NWO. But yeah, I'm like, the story they told in that Warrior Savage match was so great. But here's the kicker. Macho delivered like 4 or 5 elbow drops to the Warrior.
Yeah.
And Warrior kicked out.
I am still not a big fan of spawning finishing moves and kicking out of them. So this is like the reason why actually not a single match from that is like in my top 10 list of honorable mentions. And also, like I say, Randy Savage was way too fucking good and still too young to fucking retire.
And the fact that he lost the match and they had to bring him back by the end of the year.
Yeah.
It's like, and they should have never put that in the contract to say it's a retirement match.
I mean, still at fucking WrestleMania 10, which is one of my favorite WrestleManias of all time. The Macho Man match against Crush felt like under the card. Like it felt like, you know, even when I was watching it back then, I felt that the Macho Man is better than this.
Yeah, it's like that was like the second or third match on the card.
Yeah.
It's crazy how far they made him drop.
Yeah.
But one of the best things about him losing that match was reuniting with Miss Elizabeth. And they gave us one of the best moments of the card is him and Miss Elizabeth reuniting after being separated for so long.
But also like, yeah, this is a happy moment. But the sad moment is WrestleMania 8. Ric Flair never showed us the centerfold.
Never sold it. Never sold it.
Never sold it.
Also, WrestleMania 7 is the last time the Hart Foundation was together as a team. And I know Al brought up in the chat, back then, teams stayed together for a long time. The Hart Foundation started at WrestleMania 2, ended at WrestleMania 7. That you will, unless you're the Usos or New Day, you're not going to see too many tag teams in modern times stay together for that long.
And it was such a perfect tag team, you know, because like if a good tag team is, if a good tag team is like really, you know, you have clearly the person that you want to push with Brett, and then you have like a really solid number 2. It's hard to find a solid number 2 that can help you to stay in the spot. And Jim Neidhart, you know, never got maybe the singles run that he deserved for being such a loyal number 2 for so many years. But it's still, you know, it's when you think about, I mean, you know, wrestling is big again, but when you think about like 10 years before now, that even though Jim Devon Neidhart was like a number 2 in that, he's still more recognizable to regular people than stars later on.
You know, I didn't mention it as a highlight for the last WrestleMania 6, but with just thinking about WrestleMania 7, it was the end of Demolition as well. The complete watered down version of Demolition. It was Crush and Smash.
Yeah.
And it was just a sad way for that team to go out like that.
Yeah, and for Wonder became the Repo Man.
And just the year prior, they beat the Colossal Connection of Andre the Giant and Haku to win the tag belts. And that was Andre's final WrestleMania. You know, he turned babyface at the end and attacked Bobby Heenan.
Yeah.
And, you know, I forgot to mention that as a highlight for WrestleMania 6, but You know, just the thought of Demolition winning the tag belts from Andre and Haku, and then being relegated to just losers in WrestleMania 7, even though Axe wasn't there.
Yeah.
It just was a sad end for a team that was just so damn good in the 80s. Had the classic theme song, and just every match they had was entertaining, and they were just great brawlers who knew how to work.
It's so crazy with Vince, you know, like what people he threw away, because on the other hand, then you have like Vince being lifelong, you know, thankful for what Andre did. So that basically Andre was like, you know, not even Hogan or somebody else. If you would ask Vince who was like the most important wrestler, was like Andre. There's a reason why you are like where he did the huge Andre statue, and also the memorial battle royale.
And Andre did make an appearance at WrestleMania 7. But yeah, WrestleMania 7, like between 7 and 8, when we get to 8, which is coming up next, it's pretty much, we're winding down on the golden era of wrestling.
Yeah. Number 8, despite the shitty main event that was shitty already by itself, because the wrong person was about to go over, despite that, and having also like a very failed Papa Shango run in, this is one of the most underrated WrestleManias ever. You know, you have like classics on there, of course, like Rowdy putting Brett over clean, and of course the real main event, Ric Flair versus Randy Savage for the first time meeting in the ring. Of course, later on still met in WWF and of course in WCW later on. But you know, this, you know, when Ric Flair joined, this was like one of the dream matches that you wanted. Was it the dream match that it could have been? Probably not. But it's still Randy Savage versus Ric Flair. And the storyline was bogus, but it was awesome with the photoshopped pictures with Elizabeth and the centerfold that he wanted to publish.
But you know, I always thought it fit Ric Flair's character for him to put in that he was with Liz. Like Liz was mine before she was yours.
Yeah. And this was like my number 4. It's like this is my number 4 pick for my top 10 list. I love this match. I love the silly things about it. I love Ric Flair playing Ric Flair. I love also that it's just no blading rule. Fuck it, I'm Ric Flair.
you gotta love, and it's funny because he bladed in his match, and then Brett did the same thing, but he was able to get away.
Yeah. And of course Randy Savage in there, and also, you know, that when Elizabeth had to run in a young boy wonder, Shane McMahon.
I agree, because I feel like WrestleMania 8 was the peak of Ric Flair's booking in the WWF with the whole Macho Man storyline. After that, he just declined in terms of how he was presented in the WWF. And when the more you really look at Ric Flair's early run, it's like they could have did way more. But I think what we didn't get was Hogan versus Flair at this WrestleMania, and it really like hurt what Vince thought of with Flair, because him and Flair and Hogan didn't really sell out them house shows, and it soured Vince on doing the match at WrestleMania. I'm like, it doesn't matter, do the match.
Yeah, I still
go ahead.
Yeah, I still say that probably wrestling wise, it's actually good that we got Macho Man versus Flair, and despite everything how Ric Flair was booked, he's still fucking Ric Flair. He still made it work. He still won the best Royal Rumble in history.
But this comment right here is the example. That's WWF fans who didn't watch wrestling outside the WWF, that was their opinion of Ric Flair. They didn't really see him as nothing more than an old guy with white hair. And it's like, oh, he says he's a real world champ, but Hulk Hogan is bigger than him. How he could be Hulk Hogan?
It's also funny how
I remember being in school of people who didn't know who Ric Flair was, because I did see WCW before Ric Flair came to WWF and knew of him. But a lot of fans didn't know who he was, so they really didn't think he was anything special.
Isn't it funny that Ric Flair was long an old man that other people are alive?
But yeah, you know.
Yeah,
and
also with... I also just think that Flair and Hogan just don't work. It could work very well if both would want it to work. Because also, let's face it, at WCW, it didn't work. And it also didn't work when it should have worked when they put NWO versus the Four Horsemen. Because that would have been so awesome if they would have booked that right. But it's just like, as you always say, with egos in wrestling, and yeah, he was the real world champion. Heenan knew it, I knew it, Ric Flair knew it. And also, he's at least a 21-time or 22-time champion and not a 16-time world champion.
Man, they had the perfect storyline. The man came to the World Wrestling Federation with the big gold belt.
The true championship belt, yeah.
I'm like, you can't get no better than having this man jump ship and bring the NWA World title with you. And eventually he had to send it back once he got his deposit money on it. But still, like, the story was right there. And it just got wasted.
Yeah, but like I still say, for everything that didn't work, we still got an awesome Ric Flair run at it, especially, just the Royal Rumble win alone was worth everything. And also this match with Randy Savage, just a fantastic match. I absolutely love it. And the Ric Flair promos we get from that time, still feeding families, as the young people would say. Of course, like every Flair promo, because we all know that they can get a free ticket for Space Mountain.
Yeah, like I said, the Ric Flair Macho Man match is the main event. And it showed that Flair had much better chemistry with Savage than he did with Hogan.
Absolutely.
And I like the Bash of the Beach match Flair Hogan had, but I thought their matches in WCW were hit or miss. Because it's like, you already know that Hogan's not going to...
that is a problem with it, because on paper, on sensible paper, this feud makes so much sense, but in reality, you just know that Hulk Hogan would, as we see later with Bret Hart, Hulk Hogan would let Bret go over, because in Hulk Hogan's mind, I think like Dan said before, but also probably for Hulk Hogan, it was just like, this old dude that is like size-wise not on par, that Flair could out-wrestle him in a telephone booth. That Hulk Hogan was not concerned about that.
No. Speaking of Bret Hart, the match he had with Roddy Piper for the Intercontinental Championship. To me, that was the second best match of the card.
Yes, absolutely. I still think that, it's on my honorable mentions, because this is like a match and you watch it, and in your head you would actually think that Bret and Piper had a better chemistry than they actually had. But despite that, it's still fantastic storytelling. The finish, classic Bret finish, something like out of the extraordinary, something surprising, and it's nice. That's cool.
Man, like, I can watch that, man. And to be honest, like, people talking about passing the torch.
Yeah.
Piper has such respect for Bret, and he rarely took losses. There were matches that he took pinfall losses that was never aired on TV.
Yeah.
But for Piper to take a pinfall loss on pay-per-view, it had to be special. And Bret Hart was the guy that said, I'm going to take a pinfall loss. And the way he did it was creative as fuck.
Yeah. And also, it didn't diminish, like, Rowdy's standing. So he put Bret over, and Bret came up with a finish that also, like, didn't take like a piece out of the crown of Rowdy. But
Yeah.
I think this match was probably better watching it live than watching it in retrospective, because you expect it to be so much more. So I think that was held it a little bit down in retrospective for me, because it's Bret fucking Hart and this Rowdy Piper. And I expect it to be more of a banger than it is.
I mean, let's be honest. Roddy Piper is not known for class.
I know.
He's not known for
he was in the shape of his life back then, though.
Yeah, like the only match that people like rank high in Piper's career is that dog collar match with Greg the Hammer Valentine at Stargate. You know, but Piper is more known for his brawls than putting up technical mastery. That's why this match with Bret was something different. And I love the slow seeds of a heel turn from Piper, but then he listens to the crowd when he had the ring bell, and he's like, nah, I don't want to do that, because, you know, Bret Hart is respectable.
Yeah, it's a fantastic match. It's the second best one on this list. And it's probably also one, especially for the early WrestleMania, one of the best, like, mid-card matches.
And then there's a match on the show that it was great listening to these two guys talk on the podcast, The Undertaker and Jake Roberts, and how, you know, Jake took Undertaker under his wing, and then they had that fantastic rivalry with Macho Man, and then it led to Undertaker's face turn, and then the match, like, Undertaker, it had to be tough for a lot of the old veterans are like, yeah, I'm gonna hit my finisher on the Undertaker, and he just gets up from it. It's like, what the fuck? And wrestlers were very protective of their finisher. So, but Jake was like, I'm gonna put him over, I'm gonna hit the DDT on the floor, and he still no-sells.
Yeah.
And then Undertaker gave him a tombstone on the floor and the tombstone in the ring. And the match was over, and that was the end of Jake the Snake Roberts running the WWF. At least the first part of it.
Yeah. And this is how you do it, and not like, oh, you got me, brother.
I want when Undertaker and Kane talked about their match at WrestleMania, and when Kane hit the tombstone, I said, you got me, brother. Oh man. But yeah, WrestleMania 8 was a really good one. I enjoyed
very underrated.
Yeah.
And right in there between the golden era and like the new generation, like.
And speaking of new generation, since we're was that I got to play that new generation, because now we're getting into WrestleMania 9. Now this one right here takes the cake as in many people's list as one of the worst WrestleManias of in the history.
Yeah, I do have to say that for me there's actually one honorable mention that basically, I wouldn't say saves it, but it's like a match that I always rewatching fully when I'm like doing like rewatching sessions. And what WrestleMania 9? And of course, as you know, like with big Scott Steiner mark, it's the Steiner brothers versus the Hatchery.
Yes. Yes,
That match is fucking
best match. Yes, great match.
Stiff as fuck. And of course, you know, you can do it with the Steiners and Hattrick. Because for me, the Steiner brothers, if you ask me, I know there's a lot of Legion of Doom marks. And of course, Legion of Doom was like, is basically welcome to the WWE there. But for me, the Steiner brothers are still the best tag team in history.
And the head strength was good.
And all above the world, of course, like Bloodline, Hattrick.
Yeah, but that definitely was the best. The bump where Scott Steiner took, they lift him up and he fell all the way outside. I thought he landed on his head.
Yeah, that match is so good. I know it's like every fucking time when a rewatch WrestleMania 9 and they start like with the Steiner match with Hattrick is like, I forgot how good this is, and then afterwards it's like, oh boy.
Yeah, that match was the best match of the card.
You know, you must have known something is foul when Hogan accepted to be in the mid-card.
oh, you know, Hogan being in the mid-card, he's like, I'm going to find my way in the main event, brother. I'm going to politic my way into the main event.
Yeah.
And the problem with WrestleMania 9 is just, it's boring.
Yeah,
a lot of the matches are boring. There's styles clashes, like Mr. Perfect versus Lex Luger. That was a styles clash. They just did not work together at all. You know
that's a sad thing, because I think personally, as a history, as someone who studied history and as someone who loves the Roman Empire, I love the fucking Colosseum in Rome, and like the antique vibe. I absolutely love it. But then, except for the Hattrick versus Steiner Bros, which is like such a fantastic match, everything else is like a total stinker. And the matches that could have worked just were like politicked out, because Bret versus Yoko. Bret brought the best out of Yokozuna. I have like the WrestleMania 10 matches and honorable mentions. Still, it's back then, when it was like 11, when I was like 10 to 12 in that time. Yokozuna felt like such a menace, and it felt like it's like almost really impossible to beat him. So later, when Bret overcame him, was like it almost like with Hulk Hogan, it really devalued Yokozuna for a while. They managed to save him, and Yoko got his heat back.
and that's the thing. When it came to that Bret Yoko match, they both worked hard in that match.
Yeah.
Especially Bret, considering what he was working with.
Because Yoko was not that bad in the ring at that point. He just gassed out very fast.
Yeah, and they worked hard. You get the finish. And then while I'm not a fan of, Harder being thrown in the eyes and you just lose like that. Like I felt like Bret, they should have found a different way to take the belt off of Bret as opposed to that.
Then watch our Royal Rumble. We did also a best of Royal Rumble screen, and we're like, who's the man? Sid's the man. So we are of course like Team Sid, and it's just such a shame that Sid passed away before they got him like a Hall of Fame introduction, because he fucking deserves it. He's a WWF champion, he's a WCW champion, and just not the best wrestler, but such a presence.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, I don't want to watch a Sid match just because it's not going to be the best. I want to watch because Sid is intense. He has an intense charisma about himself, and that's
he was
all that
over.
matters. Yeah,
a lot of people forget how fucking over Sid was. And also, I think when we did like the Survivor Series, when we did also the Survivor Series,
you had the Sid Shawn Michaels match,
in there in my top 10 in my top 10 list. Yeah, especially that's what a lot of people say about Sid, that he had like this live charisma. until he got a microphone in the hand, of course. But that's a it's a whole different story.
But back to this. Bret and Yoko put so much work into their match. The finish was a bit weak, but then it just completely gets undone when Hogan come in there and beat Yoko in like 3 minutes to win the title.
And also, what were the rules? What were the fucking rules that he even got the championship match?
That make no sense. And Yoko just went through a 15-minute match with Bret Hart. They worked hard, and then he loses in 5 minutes to a fucking boot in the leg drop.
It's like, when you just see Hulk Hogan's career as a consistent heel turn, a lot of things make sense.
Like I said, when Macho Man turned on him, and you could see the instability that Macho Man had for Hulk Hogan. Hulk Hogan was a glory hound. He was holding all the spotlight during the Mega Powers out.
Yeah, and ask Jesse Ventura what he thinks about Hulk Hogan. It's always very nice to hear.
So it's man, and it's funny because at 1992, I always felt 1992 was the year of Bret Hart. From being Intercontinental Champ, that match he had with Davey Boy Smith at SummerSlam, and then the whole thing with Shawn Michaels. I was becoming a fan of even more of Bret Hart. The match he had at the Rumble with Razor Ramon. For him to lose the title like this, and then Hulk Hogan takes the belt, I was mad. Because I was on board with Bret Hart. He had a cool look with the glasses and the jacket, the pink and black attack. I was a big Hitman fan, and they just undid him right there just for Hulk Hogan to get another title run.
Everybody was on board. It's just and this is also something where you can really see how quick Vince changes plans. That Hulk Hogan just got him into his ear and gave him cold feet about it.
And I always said that Vince McMahon, he always relied on Bret, but he never let Bret be truly the guy. Because he kept him away from the title for a whole year after WrestleMania 9. And then had him go through hurdles to say, well, Luger is going to challenge for the belt and you're going to challenge for the belt. And we're going to just decide on you because Luger ain't mailing it out.
Yeah.
He has the belt, and then he loses it to Bob Backlund just to transition it to Diesel.
Yeah, I mean, he also did Lex Luger very dirty, to have him this huge turn from the narcissist, suddenly to the all-American total package. It was almost like he was basically set up to fail in that role.
Yeah.
But I very much appreciate Bret Hart for all his skills. But back then I was a huge Diesel mark, so of course I hated Bret.
There's your comment right there, V.
Yeah. Yeah, Owen Hart I was always a bigger Owen fan. So at WrestleMania I was which is actually
We're coming up to it, man. We're coming up to it. Yeah. Hold that thought. We're coming up to it. The greatest opener in history of WrestleMania.
My notes exactly.
But yeah, when it came to that, I was just sour on that. That the Money Inc. versus Mega Maniacs. It's that match was boring, and then it had a fuck finish. Come on, man. Y'all don't want to give Hogan the tag belt because Hogan feel that tag belts. That's beneath me.
Because Hogan was already busy politicking to get the big one at the end of the show.
They don't want to have Money Inc. win the match. I'm man, Beefcake is in the match. Let him take the pinfall loss.
Also shout out to Macho Man who allegedly gave Hulk a black eye.
That's the story.
Yeah. Well, still had this lust in his eyes.
And another disappointing thing about Mania 9, Shawn Michaels and Tatanka having an 18-minute match just for it to be a fucking double count out. What the fuck?
Yeah, it is such unworthy. I mean, it's also so interesting because with WrestleMania 8, there was like this botched finish against Santana.
Oh yeah, the Shawn Michaels Tito Santana match.
I do have to say, honorable mention, Sherry Martel singing the theme still hits differently.
I always thought that version of Shawn Michaels' theme was underrated.
I just think too. I still thought like later on they should have brought it out again because I think just that hits different. I love the sensational Sherry rendition.
And that's the thing is fighting like you're gonna give Tatanka 18 minutes with Shawn Michaels. The match was boring, it was dull, it was dry, and then it had no fucking finish. It was a double counter. Really? A waste of time.
Yeah, I do have to say that I wouldn't say Tatanka was over in a way like, oh, we want to see him in the main event, but he was like a very solid like mid-carder.
He was decent.
And actually, like I really enjoyed like his no-sell dance in the ring. That actually I think that quite worked.
And you saw the match between Bob Backlund and Razor Ramon. Like Razor was so over with the fans, they had to eventually turn the face because nobody was interested in seeing Bob Backlund at this time.
It was just, at that time, it wasn't, of course, right before, because that in the next year, suddenly, when you had like the Razor versus Shawn feud, you had Magic.
Yeah. And then the last thing I'll say, double doink.
There's only one doink. And he dead.
And he was a piece of shit person too.
Yeah, he was a shit piece of a person, but he was a fantastic doink.
Yeah, Razor Ramon was awesome, man. Rest in peace, Scott Hall. But yeah, WrestleMania 9.
So we all know what my number one WrestleMania match is. Everybody knows me.
WrestleMania 10.
This is where I turned from somebody who likes wrestling, who watches wrestling occasionally for the big thing, to I'm gonna watch it like on a weekly basis. This WrestleMania 10 made me fall in love with wrestling. This was my show when I will think it was like 11, and this is when wrestling became, at least here, it actually became cool. And everybody had something rooting for, like in school, and it was between three people. Like you had like Diesel, Shawn Michaels, and Bret Hart. These were like the three factions at my school.
When it came to that opener between Bret Hart and Owen Hart,
it's a 10 out of 10 match.
The build-up that started at Survivor Series 93 escalated at the Royal Rumble, and then you get that open.
It's
they've been trying to do brother versus brother matches. Like you had the Hardys did it, the fucking Usos.
This was not even a wrestling match.
But Bret versus Owen is top tier match between two real life brothers, and it's like you can just see that match 100 times, and it gets better and better and better every time you watch it.
Best WrestleMania opener, and probably also later on, which we're also gonna talk in the future, best steel cage match in history. Bret and
we gotta talk the SummerSlam stuff.
Yeah, Bret and Owen, pure magic. Story, not only in a technical way, but also storytelling wise. And what I loved about it is, with Owen he was a heel, but you got him. It was so understandable. So I was totally in the team Owen, and I was actually because back in the day when I still thought it was like real, it's like there's no way anybody can can beat Brett there. And when he won, I was like, I'm as a marker marked out. It's
Come on, it's
it's like this match, you know, it's and just the chemistry, you know, it's still like this one moment in the rest, you know, when Owen got Brett and Brett is like it's a way like of course it's easy to put your brother over, but this is just, you know, this match is just the epitome of what magic can you create when you work together instead of against each other.
Hey, he upgraded from the Rocket name to the King of Hearts name when he won King of the Ring.
Owen Hart was in the fucking Austrian charts.
That's right. That's right. Explain that, man. Explain.
Wrestling is also very big here in Europe, of course, and we have like the Catch Wrestling Association in Austria. So like in Vienna, there is like at the Heumarkt with big Otto Vance, who also sadly passed away a few years ago. It's like also this big wrestling tradition. And of course, you know that how it was back then with wrestling in the US, especially in the territories. They sent people also over to Europe and to Japan, of course, to like learn new stuff and to have a talent exchange. And at that point, like Otto Vance had basically, you know, the kid is like all these wrestlers like singing like songs, and one song made it like big into the chart, which is Young, Strong, and Healthy, whereas actually like also Giant Haystacks is in that one. And of course Steve Wright, the father of Alex Wright, is also in it. And they did like a second song, and this was actually when Owen was currently wrestling like in Austria and in Germany, and so he was also part of the wrestlers who were singing in that song. So if you go online and just look for like Otto Vance and We Are Dynamite, which could have been actually a really cool song for AEW when you think about it, especially since Owen Hart is celebrated there, which actually would work very well. I still think that Owen Hart's rendition of Brett's theme, it's so much more catchy.
Man, look, you know how many times when I got in your house for the Sega Saturn, I played Owen Hart's theme ad nauseum. Like, you could not walk by without hearing that song playing the Sega Saturn. Especially when like the Sega Saturn had that screen where the spaceship is going while you play the music. Oh.
And even WWF Raw, like on Super Nintendo and Mega Drive, just love the MIDI themes, like just.
Yeah, man.
Owen should have. You know, even. Owen should have gone to WCW and survived.
He got done dirty when Shawn Michaels didn't want to work with him in the program.
Yeah.
And then he became a job guy to Triple H. I was like, come on. Yeah. We're not even going to get, when we get to that WrestleMania, then we'll go in on that.
Yeah. Because on paper, like Black Heart totally works, but you know, Shawn Michaels politics, you know, even Shawn Michaels would say that Shawn Michaels was not a good guy back then.
Oh no. So now we talk about guys getting done dirty. Lex Luger on the other hand, he got done dirty at SummerSlam, and then this was like this was pretty much the end of the Lex Luger run in the WWF.
First of all, very happy how Lex turned his life around. Yes. Shout out, of course, to Diamond Dallas Page. Even more happy that he's still alive to get his Hall of Fame introduction. Yes. And as much as in retrospective, I would have loved for him to hold the WWF title. It was the right choice to put it on Brett. And still very happy. You know, a lot of people make fun about Lex Luger and forget how fucking over he was in WCW. And especially after, for that 1 week, he took the belt of Hogan. That that was like such a magical moment. Even me as a NWO fan, even I was like fucking happy for Lex.
And one thing you got to give Lex respect. He never held a grudge, or he never felt that not getting the title was like something that was against him. He knew he wasn't getting the title, and he was fine. And he enjoyed his time in the WWF to the point where, even if he wasn't going to be pushed and treated the best way, he had no grudge over his run.
Yeah. I would have to say, also go back and watch some of his matches when he was like a WCW champion. He didn't have like the best. They didn't give him the best gimmick in his feud with Simmons. But I still think that the Lex Luger matches with Simmons, absolutely something you can revisit. And a lot of better wrestling matches than he actually had in the WWF at that point. And the Torture Rack is just one killer finishing move.
Yeah. Although I did like when he was the narcissist, when because he had the metal plate in his forearm.
Oh, the metal plate, the
like he would just pull that down and just blast dudes and knock them out. So I thought that was a great second finish as a heel.
Yeah.
But another person who got done dirty, I felt like we talked about it earlier, Macho Man Randy Savage. This was his final WrestleMania ever.
It's
like I get the storyline he had with Crush, where Crush turned on him and went heel and stuff, but it just felt so. It felt so low down for Macho to be so at like the beginning of the card.
Exactly. It feels, if this would have been, bringing Macho back 20 years later, it would be good to have. It would be okay to having it a nostalgia spot at that point in the card. But Macho Man, in the beginning of the 90s, as you have seen later in WCW, could still fucking go for years. And this booking in the next years that we see is the reason why we have Macho Man at WCW, why we later have Kevin Nash at WCW.
And I want to talk about the Bret Hart winning the title before we get to that, the second best match on the show. It was great.
Best match on the show.
Yeah, it was great seeing him get the belt. And what made it better is the storyline, the year-long storyline. Him being so far away from the title, Yoko defending it against other opponents. You felt Bret was vindicated being back in the main event, because it felt like the way Vince was trying to prop up Lex Luger and the All-American Lex Express stuff, that he was just doing that to get away from Bret, because he didn't feel Bret was charismatic. He wasn't the best promo guy, so he just wanted to move away from Bret and put somebody else in that spot. But the fans were all in with Bret. Every time they took the belt off Bret and kept him away from the main event scene, the fans was like, Bret, we need you back in the title picture. And they, especially in 1995, where Bret was feuding with a bunch of lower level guys, he's like, man, Bret, you're a main eventer. So going back to Bret was vindication for what happened in WrestleMania 9. And for him to beat Yoko and get the belt, it was great. And the ending was perfect, because you see Owen Hart in the aisle. Like,
should have been me.
Yeah, the Dolph Ziggler moment, it should have been me. And it just set the stage for the year-long run.
It's like a story building. You have the climax of the story of Bret being back where he belongs at that point. And then, of course, because he lost the first match against Owen at that night, and Owen is there, I just beat you, like, I should be champion.
Perfect storytelling.
Perfect. However, best match on the card.
There you go.
probably one of my most favorite WrestleMania matches in history. This pure magic. This match, like this is like the WrestleMania that made me just addicted to wrestling, and the ladder match, Razor versus Shawn. Also, the storytelling straight from the beginning. You have like Shawn like not going through the ladder like, hey, I'm smart in this, and then Razor going under the ladder like, all the bad luck, but doesn't matter. And like all the story behind it, because it's about who's the true Intercontinental Champion. Because Shawn never really lost it.
Yeah, he got suspended.
Yeah. Exactly. The Intercontinental, I think it's like a good way. I'm so happy that, of course, Gunther restored the glory of the Intercontinental Championship, and Braun Breaker is also like a very worthy.
See, and this is what the IC title needs. After years of being just a mediocre title, it needs to be restored to saying this is the secondary belt that elevates you to the main event. It needs to have some strong prestigiousness to it. So Gunther did a great job restoring it, and now Braun Breaker is doing an even excellent job maintaining.
And because they're like on the they're carrying a belt that giants built up. And we already talked.
Yeah, in the 2000s, that's what happened to the IC belt. Everybody was winning
it's way better right now. It's way better right now with the mid-cap belts. Like US Championship should do a little better, I hope. But the Intercontinental Championship right now has like a fantastic standing. We have already talked about it today. Macho Man Randy Savage versus, of course, like Steamboat for the Intercontinental Championship. Rowdy Piper, Bret Hart, and here like Shawn Michaels, Razor Ramon, and of course the Intercontinental Champion Ultimate Warrior beating the WWF Champion. So actually the Intercontinental Champion going over the WWF Champion. This for me actually, because as I said, I was a huge Click fan, even though I didn't know it was the Click back then. I loved the Shawn Michaels magic, I loved Razor Ramon, and of course Diesel was my guy. So for me at that time, when Bret was the champion, and you had like, of course, Razor, Shawn, and Diesel feuding over the Intercontinental title. For me, the Intercontinental title at that point was held in higher regard than the WWF Championship.
And this match between Shawn and Razor had a great build-up, great story going into it, and I say it set the standards of what ladder matches, in my opinion, should be. Because now ladder matches are just used for being crash test matches. Like everybody wants to take massive bumps and stuff like that. But this was still the essence of wrestling, with the ladder being just a prop.
Exactly. This was still there's like probably this is like a match that we're not going to talk about in the top list. But I think it was the Money in the Bank ladder match that Mr. Kennedy won, where even though when I was watching it and I fucking paid pay-per-view money for it, and you had like Jeff Hardy being on the ladder, and instead of grabbing like the fucking case, he just made like a spot where this is like, yes, I know it's not a real fight, but they should still treat it like one. It's like, go for the, if there would be like a huge grudge, for example, like with what I love about WrestleMania 40, where Roman Reigns, like, had the chance, like, with the chair, if we should knock Seth Rollins, or if we should knock Cody over and just kept his title. But the hatred for Seth Rollins was so huge that he chose Seth that's understandable. You know, in such a grudge thing, I get it that things are more important than winning the actual match in the heat of emotion. But when there's like no such thing in there and people are just going for the spot instead of for the win, this is just stupid. And this is why this ladder match between Shawn and Razor is so good, because like you said, Shawn, it's used as a prop as it should.
Yeah, too many matches, ladder matches nowadays. The ladder becomes more the focus than the actually getting the belt.
Yeah,
you know, because it's like, what spot can I come up with next? That's outrageous. That's going to get posted on social media and people are going to replay it over and over.
Yeah,
like you look at the spots in this match, it's tame compared to what we see modern times, but it makes sense. It works because they're not out there to try and do spots after spots after spots. They're doing one spot to take an opponent out and then try and go for the belt. You know, I love this match, and I love the SummerSlam rematch they had because that was just as good in my opinion. But this match alone is the template of what ladder matches should be. It should not be spot fest after spot fest after spot fest.
And I love death matches. I love with ladders where you get some wild things to see, but it still should make sense. You know, it's just like I still want it to be treated as real.
And you know what? That's all Jim Cornette wants. He
doesn't share my love for death matches.
He don't like death matches. But what you said about you want it to be real, too many of these ladder matches and these matches that they do, they just look phony and doesn't look realistic.
Exactly, because I don't want, you know, it's the same thing. There's like one spot that I absolutely dislike. It's like this one spot when I see it already built up and I'm like, stop this fucking shit. Is, you know, when somebody goes on the top rope, wants to jump outside the ring, and you see already the group of people outside being ready to catch him. This makes no sense. Stop this fucking spot.
It sucks, man. But yeah. Shawn versus Razor ladder match, top match of the show, and it's hard because it's always this match or Brett versus Owen.
Yeah. This WrestleMania, there's a lot. This WrestleMania is a mixed bag. You know, there's some matches on there that we don't even need to talk about, but just by the opener, by the ladder match, and of course also by the main event, makes this one of the strongest WrestleManias. And nostalgia-wise, my favorite WrestleMania.
And you know what's sad is that the next WrestleMania, oh boy, this shit right here.
Yeah, there's, like I say, it is like my number 9 on the list, I think. And this is only for reasons because it was my last year as a preteen mark watching wrestling, that the Shawn versus Diesel match as being like a huge Diesel mark. I watched it like really through the eyes of, you know, heart pumping, and it's like please Diesel win this. So I was so invested in this match emotionally as a back then 12-year-old fan that this match still holds a very high place, like in my regard. So it's like a very personal choice to be in the top 10. Otherwise, it would have no right to be there. Not because it couldn't have been a fantastic match. No, it could have been a fantastic match. Kevin Nash, fantastic, like in-ring charisma. Not the best wrestler, naturally. Shawn Michaels could have done to him what Brett actually did for Diesel and really putting it over. But Shawn Michaels went into business for himself in the match, and the way he fucked taking the jackknife powerbomb at the end. You know, after this match, that Kevin Nash still considers Shawn Michaels as a friend, speaks actually for Kevin Nash and like his like big heart.
Man, I think it was Scott Keith or one of those guys that whenever they say the power bomb, they call it the Poochie bomb. And it was specifically because of this match and how Shawn Michaels took the Jackknife Powerbomb is what led to that turn. And that exactly what I said previously. Bret Hart made Diesel look like $1 million in their match at the Royal Rumble. Yeah. Shawn Michaels was like, in defeat, I'm gonna get my shit in and look good. And in turn, Kevin Nash kind of looked awkward in the match. He was off because Shawn was doing everything at a speed of 1 million. And in turn, it just made Nash look weak. And he won the match. But he just didn't look as strong as he would have had he fought somebody like Bret.
Because I remember when I was watching it, I was exhausted and I was like happy and I was very much relieved that Diesel was still champion. But I had like this, like in my mind is like I was like, is he going to lose the title soon?
And when you really look at the way Vince McMahon booked Shawn throughout the rest of the year, like, man, you might as well just put the belt on Shawn.
Yeah, and let's just say it's like Kevin Nash had so many good reasons besides money to go to WCW. Luckily he did, and rest is history. NWO, best thing ever in wrestling. So and it was like, when it was like, because I always was also watching WCW, of course, like on German sports TV. And I remember, this one time when Scott Hall came and like, what the fuck?
Oh yeah, the night that changed everything.
Yeah.
But you know what's funny about that Shawn Diesel match? It didn't even main event the fucking show.
Exactly. But also the thing you have to say is, I was 12 years old. Pamela Anderson was the biggest first strap of our generation. And just seeing Pamela Anderson like there with Kevin Nash, it was a crossover. Some might say it was a conflict of interest.
Complete conflict of interest.
I back in the day, I had like a bunk bed, even though like it was like the bed upstairs, and it was like a cave inside, and in the cave I had like all the pictures of Pamela Anderson on the wall.
I'm gonna say this. I occasionally watch Baywatch, but I could never get into it outside of the Bays. Like,
what?
The show just didn't appeal to me.
If I wouldn't have watched Baywatch, I would have lost my Austrian citizenship because the Hoff was in it. It's the law to watch everything with David Hasselhoff when you're German. It's like
I'll be like, I'll watch it here and there, but I just could never consistently watch Baywatch because it's just the storylines was just. The only time I may have watched it fully was when WCW crossover with it. Because I was like, oh shit, Hulk Hogan and Ric Flair, Macho Man, all there. Like,
Waiter,
Baywatch.
It's this is all probably something we're gonna. It was like happens over WrestleMania 13. It's fucking Hasselhoff still sells out stadiums today when he tours. It doesn't matter. David Hasselhoff is God here. Like, don't Hasselhoff.
In the words of William Regal, if you go over there and besmirch the name of David Hasselhoff, you will not come out alive.
Yeah, like you get some heat for that.
But yeah, Shawn and Diesel didn't main event the show. It was Lawrence Taylor and Bam Bam Bigelow.
Do have to say that until Logan Paul that Lawrence put up the best match as a celebrity. It shouldn't be the fucking main event. However, I just can't hate on this match because it overperformed so much.
I credit that to Bam Bam, but I'll give Taylor his props. He hung in there. Even if he was gassed halfway through.
He made move from the ropes, and everybody that was in a ring knows the fucking ropes are the most dangerous thing in a wrestling ring and can be so fucking unpredictable. So being in there doing rope spots in your first fucking wrestling match, I think that people should give Lawrence Taylor more credit and respect because I don't think that anybody thought that he could. I mean, of course, also Bam carried him very well, but I think also that back in the day, nobody thought that we would get that sort of match out of it. Still should not fucking headline WrestleMania. This could have been a Raw main event, for a special episode, of Raw, and it
should have been second to last or third to last, but not main event.
Yeah. I mean, Lawrence Taylor had the lifestyle of a wrestler, but
now I think about it, yes, he did.
He would have fit in with the boys very well.
Yes, he would. But other than that, the whole thing was just this WrestleMania. Bret Hart and Bob Backlund was in one of the worst I Quit matches ever. The whole show just sucked. The only good thing was that Owen Hart finally won the title in the WWF, teaming up with Yokozuna to win the title.
I'm very happy, of course, for Yoko and Owen. Rest in peace to both. I never bought the tag team between them.
It was something for Yoko to do. They had to put him in the.
Yeah, of course. That's exactly how it felt.
Yeah,
even
they
back then.
Well, we don't want Yoko in the ring solo, so just put him in the tag team with Owen and let Owen do most of the work. It is what it is. Owen got the title out of it, and that was a good thing. And the team really did feel forced together, and they held the belts for a good while too. But the tag team scene alone was just mediocre. I never really cared for the Smoking Guns.
Yeah, which is so interesting because actually, Billy and Bart Gunn are actually two fantastic workers. Of course, especially Billy. Actually, he's getting better with age.
Man, still working at 60, man.
And with Bart, of course, they fed him to.
They did him dirty with that brawl for all bullshit.
Yeah, they did him very dirty, but he was very over in Japan, which a lot of people don't talk about. I think Wrestling Bios, did a very good video about it because Dr. Death was huge in Japan, and by him beating Dr. Death, actually got him hugely over in Japan. So it's not like that he went into obscurity after WrestleMania, but he did still have a solid career in Japan. But yeah, it's we all know where Billy's career went after having a strange talk with God.
It doesn't matter where his career went. But yeah, WrestleMania 11 is known as one of the worst. And now here's an interesting WrestleMania. WrestleMania 12. And I say interesting is because it's a one-match show when you really think about one match going an hour.
And that match sucked.
And I love Bret Hart. And I occasionally like Shawn Michaels in this time period. But having them go an hour with no pinfalls, and it's like that match just does not work. As a kid, I enjoyed it, but the more I tried to watch it, the more I got bored of it.
What it just really destroys it ultimately for me, and I watched it back. WrestleMania 12 was the last WrestleMania that I watched before the death of WCW. What really, many years later on Raw, I absolutely despised John Cena as a wrestler and I despise Super Cena. But the hour-long Raw match that Shawn Michaels had against Cena in the main event was better than the Iron match. And for one reason in particular, not because Bret and Shawn could not give you a banger of a 1 hour match. They both absolutely can. The problem with it is that you immediately knew that it was going at least an hour. And the magic about a real wrestling match for it is also that it can end at any point of time. So you already knew that basically, you already know it's going to take an hour.
But the problem is, Triple H and The Rock did an Iron Man match, and it was way better than this because they actually had falls in it. Triple H did some dastardly shit to get ahead. It was 5-5 at one point before the whole screw job ended. Yeah. Whereas this match, it was 0-0 for the whole fucking match.
I think they thought they could add like a lot of tension with it, but what they really added was just it was so fucking boring. Really after this, and especially later, of course, when Kevin Nash and Scott Hall showed up at WCW, I was like, no more WWF for me. I once put it on, I think, and then I saw fake Diesel, and I'm like, hell no! Like,
but yeah, the 60-minute Iron Man match, and then the ending. You go to a complete draw, 0-0. I'm like, this is what made me hate Shawn Michaels, because Bret Hart should have never lost the belt. But Grill Monsoon saying, "Oh, we need overtime." I'm like, the fuck we need overtime for? It's a draw. The champion retains. It was like they had it out to get Bret right here because I felt like Shawn Michaels shouldn't have got the belt, but they just wanted to put the belt on Bret. Yeah. Then you should have had some falls in the match, and Shawn Michaels went at the last skin of his teeth.
Yeah. But you know what bothered me even more at that card?
No Razor Ramon. There has to be no Razor Ramon. That bothered me too.
And it's not, you have with Scott Hall one of the most charismatic performers in the ring that can also really good wrestling, and then you're putting against Jeff Jarrett, who never sold a dime.
That was last year. That's WrestleMania 11. That's why we didn't talk about that.
Oh, it was last year. Yeah.
Okay. Razor Ramon was supposed to fight Goldust at this.
Well, it was Goldust. Okay, it was Jeff Jarrett. Oh, yeah.
Goldust.
The Goldust. I'm with you then. Back in the day, there was like, if you would trust it, news, it was as scary as if you put on Michael Jackson. as a kid, he was as scary as Michael Jackson. In hindsight, is when you compare WrestleMania 12, I have a sleeper match on my honorable mention, WrestleMania 13, Triple H versus Goldust.
I could not get into their matches. Like, for some reason, even with Chyna there and her ragdoll and Marlena, I just could not get into Triple H.
I really like that match. I do have to say that Goldust, in retrospective, when I rewatch like Ron's matches, I would say he could have been he had main event quality.
He did get the character over.
Yeah,
and then all the outside stuff
it
say
was
that
it
they had to
the,
tone him down even more.
Yeah, it was the wrong time for that gimmick, but he made that gimmick excellent. You know, in retrospective, rewatching like the old Gotha stuff and seeing it's like, oh, there was so much potential there, but it just couldn't work in that time.
But then we didn't discuss it when we talked WrestleMania 3. But adorable Adrian Adonis, you know,
yeah,
he had flamboyant style character.
But it was different because it was like, you know, it also like, of course, like back in the day, you know, with also of course before with if you do something with Buddy Rogers and like really or like Ric Flair, you know, it's a flamboyant gimmick.
Adrian Street.
So yeah, it was different than Goldust because the flamboyant one was like more playful in a way, and Goldust just Goldust, you know, it's the difference. It's like, you know, when you have like, of course, Adrian Adonis and, you know, Buddy Rogers, etc. It's like they didn't feel like they would rape you in the ring. With Goldust, you had like
that's why Scott Hall was very hesitant on wanting to work.
Yeah, and you know, even back in the day, it's cool because I know my cousin who is like a complete piece of shit. He was like a huge Razor Ramon fan, and we basically in school like we like we just sprinkled Goldust on him like.
Hey, Razor, you like gold, so here's some Goldust.
Yeah, so basically make, of course, like all the gay jokes like with him, like.
But it's crazy when you think about how Dustin Rhodes went from natural Dustin Rhodes, son of Dusty Rhodes, to this character. It's complete shock.
It's, you know, it's also when you hear him, it makes so much sense because he was not in a good headspace back then, and of course, also like some substance abuse, etc. But Goldust was just it was just it felt, you know, like I said, when WrestleMania 11 was like my last. Now, when WrestleMania 11 was like my last year as a mark. When Hall and Nash showed up at Nitro, I had like, isn't it real after all? Like I had like.
It was around
it was
early
90.
May.
Yeah.
Early May when they joined Nitro.
And it was.
Because they still had to work the WWF shows in April.
Yeah, and at that point I was like a teenager, and wrestling became cool again with the NWO. And like I remember that since in Austria legal drinking age is like 16, like already where they know like at the pubs at the night, and I was like, I have to go. Like, where you going? I have to, like, at 10 p.m. like WCW starts at on the Deutsche Sportfernsehen. Deutsche Sportfernsehen. So DSF. So like I had to go. Like I need to watch wrestling.
But my match of the night for this show is Undertaker and Diesel.
It's a sleeper. It's one of my honorable mentions. Especially since, you know, back in the day, of course, I had no idea yet that this was basically Diesel leaving and putting like Undertaker over. So still being a Diesel fan back then, I still hope for Diesel to win, but obviously, but yeah, it's like, I think it's actually one of the first good Undertaker WrestleMania.
Yes, I was just about to say, because they put him up against a lot of slugs in the 90s. I mean, Kamala. No, he ain't fight Kamala, but he fought Kamala in '92. John Gonzalez. We did not talk about that match. He missed WrestleMania 10. He fought King Kong Bundy at 11. Yeah. And that was when King Kong Bundy was not what he was in the 80s.
Yeah, Jake the Snake could have. Like, it was just not the time for Undertaker yet to really put on like real matches.
Yeah, and then he beat Jimmy Snuka in his first WrestleMania.
Yeah, which also. Hey, what up? Yeah, so basically this was like. I think like it's really when Undertaker also like was able to show improved wrestling in the ring.
And he fought a big man that was competent enough to say we can get a good match. I love the double boot spot. I always love when two big guys just hit them.
Yeah, that's like
double boot. It's great.
This is definitely like a sleeper WrestleMania rewatch match that people should go back and watch. Since like you wouldn't expect at that point the Undertaker having such a good match against Diesel, because usually like at that point you would assume you need like a Shawn Michaels, Bret Hart type to give them like a watchable match. But no, this is like the first real match that you actually could be talk about it when you're talking the street.
Yeah, we talked about
we already talked about that
minute match and how conflicted it is when it came to that Iron Man match. And I will say WrestleMania 12 is the debut of Stone Cold Steve Austin and Triple H. Austin fought Savio Vega in a decent match. It wasn't nothing special. I thought the strap match they had the following month was much better. And then Triple H had the honor to get squashed by the Ultimate Warrior in his return.
Well, it still beats his match with Henry Godwin.
But yeah, WrestleMania 12 is like middle of the road for me. So, but now we're getting into the final part. We finally got to the 13th edition of WrestleMania, and it's a one-match show for me. For me, like I said, it was like at this point I just watched WCW, so I don't have an emotional connection to this WrestleMania. Which it's interesting. I also don't like the Stone Cold Steve Austin character. Like we also talked about in the past. We know that, man. All our viewers know that TV is a stunning Steve Austin mark.
Exactly. Stunning Steve Austin was where it was at. Hollywood Blondes, Pillman, and Stunning Steve was way cooler. Like I really wish WCW would have.
Eric Bischoff was like Stunning Steve was nobody.
Yeah. It's just the Stone Cold character never worked for me.
It worked in this match.
I do have to say that I absolutely get why Bret Hart versus Stone Cold is the first immortal moment match that is introduced in the Hall of Fame. Most of all, probably also because you can still bring out Bret Hart and Stone Cold without getting booed by the audience, which of course helps it as a first introduction. My favorite part of the match, actually, I mean, the match, of course, is just very well structured, in-ring psychology. The ending is just brilliant. It's just like I don't have an emotional connection to this match, except for at that time I was also starting to watch mixed martial arts, and I loved Ken Shamrock. I do think that Ken Shamrock was a bad choice as a guest referee because he made Stone Cold and Bret look small.
I thought Bret and Stone Cold was almost taller than him.
I know, but he was so fucking buff and so roided. Which I totally miss. Like, it's also like I don't watch mixed martial arts anymore because back then, even it was also the reason why he was at WWE, because they were talking about shutting down UFC and everything. Because I just loved the freak matches without rule. That's also why I just loved Pride in Japan, because you get all the crazy shit there, like heavyweights versus lightweights, which should never be from a sports perspective happening, but yeah. But yeah, a big Ken Shamrock fan.
But the thing with Austin versus Brett is that you did the double turn, and Brett turns heel against America, but he's babyface elsewhere.
Europe.
But I was like, Brett, as a fan, Brett wasn't wrong. Like, he had every right to voice his opinions on what was happening against him. And like I said, that's why when you really look at his career in the 90s of WWF, he can say everything that's happened since Hogan swooped in and took the title was all because they wanted to keep me down and keep me away from stuff. You know, won the title, lost it in controversial fashion multiple times. They denied him to keep the belt against Shawn Michaels and gave Shawn Michaels a chance to win. It's like, man, they've always been against me, and now Stone Cold is rising up, doing all this nefarious stuff, and getting all the glory, and I'm getting shafted over. So it's like, yo, Brett is right 100 ways.
I laugh how in the promo, Brett said like that he's getting screwed.
Hey, and he ended up getting screwed.
Yeah.
So it's like big foreshadowing what was to come.
Yeah, exactly.
So 1997 to me is the start of WWF's rise up against WCW. They still was at the bottom, but it started to change that led to the attitude era.
It's even in my notes where I was also ushered in a new era in which they set up the company for future success.
Yeah, so
and it's still the gold standard for double turn.
Yes, no double turn will be better than this. And it led to the reformation of the Hart Foundation. And we got the glory that was Canadian Stampede paper.
Yeah. It's like I said, I didn't watch it back and then, now rediscovering, I still am not the biggest fan of this era. I just was all in WCW, and it's for me it screams a lot of why I didn't watch WWF anymore. I do have to say, like I say, Triple H, still Hunter Hearst Helmsley at this point, and coming of course out with Beethoven's Ode an die Freude.
So that's your match of WrestleMania 13.
Now is my honorable mention. The best match is still just objectively, even if I don't have an emotional connection to it, is Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. That's my. Actually, now we can go over my top 10 quickly because we're already 2.5 hours in. So I think that in the next weeks we're gonna make it not with the top landers, but we just go through every WrestleMania.
Yeah.
But yeah, for the first 30 WrestleManias, my number 10 we already talked about. Dusty Rhodes and Sapphire against the Macho King and Queen Sherry. Macho King, yeah. Like I said, WrestleMania is not always about the best matches. It's also about entertainment, and this match is so entertaining. Then we already talked about my number 9 already, Diesel with Pamela Anderson versus Shawn Michaels with Jenny McCarthy. That this match should not be objectively on the top 10 list, but it's still my last WrestleMania as a pre-teen mark, so this match has a very personal reason to be on my top 10 list. Then number 8, the wrestling match that created the blueprint for modern wrestling, Ricky Steamboat versus Randy Savage, WrestleMania 3. Number 7, we just talked about it, Bret Hart versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. That, say, even though like for probably if I would have an emotional connection, if I would like Stone Cold. Like I say, I was not even the biggest Bret Hart fan back then because I was in the Team Click. So for me to have like no personal stake in it, I still think objectively it has to be in a top 10 list because it set so many, like I said, it set the gold standard for a double turn. Still nowadays, it also set the blueprint for no disqualification and I quit matches. Like, there's still people, also like on the indies, like also in GCW, still go back to this blueprint. Just even with more color, and of course the color, like Austin bled like a pig. That was also well done.
The ending shot with him and the sharpshooter fighting is just
it's great. Number 6, of course, the Ultimate Challenge, which it's like this match, even when we talked about like old wrestling, when it was not yet that old actually, but it's still like, in the new generation, when we were talking about the golden era, when you talked about the Ultimate Challenge, Ultimate Warrior versus Hulk Hogan, it always had like this mythological touch. It's almost as you were like talking about like some mythological story, some biblical story. It just feels larger than life. So it has to be there. Also shows that Hulk Hogan is actually really good in carrying a match, even with the Ultimate Warrior. Then number 5, we have, of course, the Mega Powers Explode. Long-term storytelling, done in excellence. Like I say, still wish that Randy would have gone over, but just Hulkamania was still very strong at that point.
Hulkamania had lust in his eyes for that type.
Yeah. So it was the right choice business-wise to let Hogan go over. Number 3, best WrestleMania starter in history, WrestleMania 10, Bret versus Owen Hart.
That's number 3 or 4?
It's 3.
Okay.
No, number 4. Number 4 is Randy Savage versus Ric Flair. We already talked about that match in length.
I was wondering.
Yeah, I saw so much Randy Savage on there, so yeah. Number 4, Savage Flair 4, Owen Hart, Bret Hart 3. WrestleMania 3 is number 2, Hogan versus Andre the Giant. It's just, if you think WrestleMania, this is just one of the first things that come to your mind. Hogan slamming Andre the Giant, and doesn't matter what Hulk Hogan is doing in his life, he's still body slammed Andre the Giant. Not the first time. It's like, it's so funny how a pro wrestling match that is built on so many lies. Like, Andre was not undefeated for 15 years. It was not even the first time that Hogan slammed Andre.
No, Hogan wasn't the only one that slammed Andre.
Yeah, it was like many, in Europe, it was a normal feat of strength. But the way they built it to make something, to make like pro wrestling a match with built on so many lies, feel real, is the biggest accomplishment of that match.
And the biggest reason why they got new eyes on them with WrestleMania 1 and the Rock and Wrestling thing. Yeah. And there was no YouTube or none of that stuff to show footage of other guys slamming Andre. So they was able to say that Andre was undefeated for so long and that nobody slammed him, just to put Hogan in that spotlight. So
and the thing is, back in the day, and people know Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan is still one of the biggest crossover stars in history, and everybody associates Hulk Hogan with wrestling. Nobody associates with his movies. even though the Shadow Warrior movies are excellent, as we already talked about.
Man,
but the thing is,
you have to watch Mackenzie Allen so we could talk that Hulk Hogan versus Grace Jones.
But the thing is, people nowadays say, of course, that The Rock or even John Cena are way bigger Hollywood stars. I totally agree with that. Hulk Hogan is still the biggest wrestling star that was in Hollywood. Because actually very shortly, I had a discussion where we talked the Rock movies, and I was sending the promo how The Rock destroyed Billy Gunn to the person, and the person said, I didn't know that The Rock was a wrestler.
Oh wow.
Yes, so there are still people out there, they know John Cena and The Rock from the movies, but they don't have the wrestling association. While Hulk Hogan, everybody knows he's a wrestler.
Always.
So that is for me also why it's still the match. It's also the match that made WrestleMania what it is today. And if Hulk Hogan wouldn't be who is Hulk Hogan today, this match would have been the first introduction to Immortal Moments for the Hall of Fame for sure. But they don't want Hogan to get booed out of the Hall of Fame ceremony this year for WrestleMania. So I get why they're going with Bret and Stone Cold, because it's just how Triple H says what is best for business.
Yeah.
Yes, best for business. And then of course also a very personal number one, Razor Ramon versus Shawn Michaels ladder match at WrestleMania 10. The match that made me a wrestling addict.
Man, like I said, great list. Great explanations on all those matches. Yeah. And I am hoarse. 2 hours and 41 minutes. The next 2 weeks is going to be long.
It's going to be long. I am ready for it. It's basically we should charge pay-per-view price.
I need the members only, man, so we can make money off this.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was fun. This was super fun. And the conversations and the memories will always stay with us, man. Wrestling will always be a part of, our identity and stuff. Look, I'm wearing the Rock shirt right now, man. The Rock says, man.
I'm NWA with the Southern Six.
And yeah, WrestleMania 13 was the first of Rocky Maivia, The Rock, and now we're gonna really dive into The Rock the next.
Yeah. And also for next week, since we're gonna talk a lot of Vince McMahon, also WrestleMania 20, I have a little surprise.
Yeah, a lot more Vince McMahon.
I gonna have. So if you're in for a surprise,
hey, your top 5 might be Vince McMahon match.
I'm not bringing any dildos that are named after wrestlers, but I have a surprise.
Oh Lord. But yeah, this was super fun. I'm glad we had a nice chat. A lot of wrestling fans in here, and we got 2 more weeks of this. Next week we'll do another 13 WrestleMania.
It's WrestleMania season, and it's gonna be glorious.
WrestleMania 14 to 26, I think.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's gonna be fun.
The first year.
So again, thanks everybody for joining. I know we was long, but it was well worth it.
It's already almost 1 a.m. here, so.
Yeah. So we're gonna have a fun time doing this, and we hope to see the same crew and even more next week when we talk the next set of WrestleMania stories. So
shitload of WrestleManias.
So everybody have a great weekend. Y'all be safe. Take care.